is how my love story began. There were no fireworks, no grand movie-like moment that screamed, "This is it." It started with something quiet, something simple. At the time, I had absolutely no idea that I was standing at the very beginning of a journey that would completely change who I am. We met in the most ordinary way imaginable. Think about your daily routine, the coffee shop you always go to, the path you walk every day, the same faces you see. That was us. Same place, same routine. Just another day, repeating itself. For a long time, he was just someone in my life. He wasn't special. He wasn't important in any significant way. He was just familiar. A face in the crowd that I happened to recognize. We talked sometimes. You know, those small conversations you have with people you see often. Simple jokes. Complaints about how long the week was. Little comments about the weather. It was never anything deep. Just surface-level stuff to pass the time. But slowly, so slowly that I didn't even notice it happening, he started to become a part of my everyday world. It was like a background character in a show suddenly getting more and more screen time until you realize they one of the leads. I started noticing that he was always there, consistently. When something funny happened during my day, he was the first person I wanted to tell. I'd find myself mentally rehearsing the story to make sure I got the delivery right, just to see him laugh. When something hurt me or I was frustrated, he was the one who would actually listen, without judgment, just letting me get it all out. And when I felt lost or overwhelmed by everything, just talking to him made the world feel a little bit lighter, a little more manageable. Even then, I still didn't call it love. I couldn't. It didn't fit the definition I had in my head. I told myself it was comfort. That's a safe word, isn't it? It was just friendship. We were just good friends. It was a habit, a part of my routine. I had a million explanations, all designed to keep the feeling small and contained, to keep it from becoming something bigger, something scarier. But then, I started to realize something strange was happening. Something I couldn't explain away. I found myself waiting for his messages. My phone would light up, and my heart would do this little jump, hoping it was him. I started caring about his mood more than I should have. If he was having a bad day, it genuinely affected my own. I felt this profound sense of calm, just knowing he was around, even if we weren't talking. Just his presence was enough. And honestly, that scared me. It scared me a lot, because feelings like this, real feelings, they don't just explode into existence. They don't announce their arrival. They grow quietly, in the dark, when you're not paying attention. They sneak up on you, one tiny moment at a time. It's in the shared silences, the inside jokes, the way someone remembers a tiny detail you mentioned weeks ago. It's the accumulation of all those little things that, on their own, mean nothing. But together, they mean everything. And one day, I caught myself. I was sitting there, smiling like an idiot at my phone for absolutely no reason. I wasn't even reading a message. I was just looking at his name on the screen. And in that quiet, simple, completely unremarkable moment, I finally understood. That was it. That was the moment my love story truly began, even though it had been writing itself for months. It wasn't a sudden spark. It was a slow, beautiful burn that had finally become bright enough for me to see. There's always a moment when things stop being simple. For me, that moment came slowly. And then all at once, it wasn't a big, dramatic event. It was more like a quiet shift, a change in the way I perceived everything about him. I started seeing him differently. The way he smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that only appeared when he was truly comfortable. I'd seen it 100 times, but suddenly, it felt like I was seeing it for the first time. The way his voice changed, dropping half an octave when he was serious or passionate about something. It was a subtle signal, but it started to resonate with me in a way it never had before. And then there was the way he looked when he thought no one was watching. That unguarded, pensive expression. It was like getting a glimpse into a part of him that was usually hidden. All these little details, things I had seen day in and day out, suddenly felt new, vibrant, and significant. My mind started collecting these moments like precious stones, turning them over and over, examining them from every angle. It was confusing because nothing had changed, and yet everything had. The familiar landscape of our friendship started to look like a foreign country I was just beginning to explore. Then came the feeling I couldn't ignore anymore. It crept in so quietly I almost didn't notice it at first. Jealousy. But not the loud, possessive kind you see in movies. It was the quiet kind. The kind that sits heavy in your chest like an undigested meal. It was the kind that makes you uncomfortable with yourself, that makes you question your own thoughts and reactions. The kind that makes you ask questions you're secretly terrified to find the answers to. Why does it sting when he talks about someone else with a spark in his eye? Why does my stomach clench when he mentions a name I don't know? Why do I care so much? That's when I knew. The answer to all those silent, painful questions was simple, and yet it complicated everything. I was falling in love. And with that realization, the simplicity we once shared shattered into a million intricate pieces. Suddenly, every conversation was laden with hidden meanings. Every text message was a puzzle to be deciphered. Every shared silence felt heavier, filled with all the words I was too afraid to say. Every moment together felt precious and finite, like I had to soak it all in because it could be the last time it felt this way. Our easy friendship became a tightrope walk over a canyon of unspoken feelings. But I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because love, I was discovering, doesn't just change how you feel about someone else, it changes what you're afraid of. And my list of fears was growing longer by the day. I was afraid of ruining what we had. This beautiful, easy thing we had built. I was afraid of making things awkward, of watching him pull away. More than anything, I was terrified of losing him completely. What if I confessed and he didn't feel the same? The risk of hearing that, of seeing the pity in his eyes, felt like a fall I wouldn't survive. The possibility that my feelings were entirely one-sided was a constant, haunting whisper in the back of my mind. So I stayed quiet. I built a fortress around my heart and learned to live inside it. I perfected the art of smiling when I was hurting inside. I laughed at his jokes even when my heart was aching. I became the world's best listener, absorbing every detail about his life, even when it hurt to listen. Even when he talked about his hopes and dreams with other people. I stayed close, a constant presence in his life, even when every fiber of my being was screaming in confusion and longing. I chose the slow, quiet pain of silence over the sharp, sudden pain of rejection. And so, my love story continued. A silent movie playing only for me, without him ever knowing he was the main character. If you've ever felt this way, you're not alone. Sometimes the biggest stories are the ones we never tell. Looking back, I realize something now. Every love story begins long before the first I love you. It starts in the small moments, the unnoticed ones. For me, it began with silence, with feelings I didn't quite understand, with a heart that was slowly, quietly, learning what love really is. It wasn't a sudden lightning strike. It was more like the tide slowly coming in. I'd catch myself replaying our conversations, smiling at a memory of their laugh. I'd find myself looking for them in a crowded room, a small part of me feeling settled just by their presence. These were the quiet whispers of my heart. But for a long time, I chose not to listen. These were the quiet whispers of my heart. But for a long time, I chose not to listen. It feels safer. You tell yourself it's just a crush, that it'll pass. You build a wall around your feelings, hoping to keep them contained. But love isn't something you can just lock away. It grows in the cracks of your defenses. It thrives in the silence. The more I tried to ignore it, the louder it became in my mind. Every shared glance, every inside joke, every moment of comfortable silence between us added another layer to this feeling I couldn't name. I was living in a constant state of what if. My mind was a battlefield of hope and fear, and I was getting exhausted from the fight. There's this moment in every story, a turning point, where a character has to face the truth. For me, that moment wasn't a dramatic, movie-like scene. It was a quiet evening, alone with my thoughts, where I finally stopped running. I had to admit it to myself, just to myself.
I was in love.
Saying it, even just in my own head, was both terrifying and liberating. It was like taking a deep breath after holding it for far too long. The pretending was over. I realized I couldn't keep living in that in-between space, caught between the hope of what could be and the fear of what might not. So I made a choice. Not a big, dramatic declaration, but a small, internal one. I chose to stop lying to myself. I chose to accept this feeling for what it was, without needing any guarantees. Whether my love would be returned or not, whether this would become a chapter or the whole book, I knew one thing for sure. This story mattered. Because love doesn't always need a perfect fairy tale ending to be real. Sometimes, the most important part is the beginning. It's where you discover a new depth to your own heart. It's where you learn how deeply you can feel, how vulnerable you can allow yourself to be. It's where you become brave, even in silence. This is how my love story began. With uncertainty, with fear, but also with a quiet, resilient hope. And even though I had no idea where it would lead, I know now that letting myself love was never a mistake. Because the moment you allow yourself to feel something real, something that makes you a little bit scared and a little bit brave all at once, that S when your story truly begins, it's not about the outcome. It's about the courage to feel. If you find yourself at the beginning of your own story, feeling those first quiet whispers, remember this. Love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need an audience to be valid. And sometimes, that beginning part, the one you live entirely inside your own heart, is the part that changes you the most. It's the part that teaches you who you are and what you're capable of feeling. So, embrace it. The journey is just as important as the destination. Thanks for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more reflections on life and love. See you in the next one.